If the ATF shows up at your door and wants to see some guns you just bought, what should you do? Talk about that in a moment, but first, let me let you know that we have a gun giveaway going on. It's happening right now. It's absolutely free, but it ends really soon. All you got to do is click the link down below to learn which brand new gun you could win. Tom, I am sure you've heard about the video or probably seen the video of the ATF agents in Delaware, along with a local law enforcement officer, stopping at John Q. Citizen's house to say, hey, you bought a couple of guns in the last few days. We'd like to see them. Do you still have them? We think you might be a straw purchaser. No warrant. Guys in their tactical vests just knocking on the door, holding a piece of paper that says, you bought these guns. We want to see them. What should a person do in that case?
Well, in criminal justice arena, we call this a fishing expedition, and you've been invited along. In other words, you know what? There's something that they have that has tripped their triggers, risen to their radar. Don't know why, but we'll just set that aside. Saying, look, there's behavior here that could be wrong, could be perfectly legitimate. Let's just go talk to, knock on some doors and see if we can get some consent searches and see what happens
The word
next.
I was just going to spit out was, boy, we really, cops really like the consent search.
Oh, it's a beautiful thing for law enforcement.
So, but in this case, the guy had bought multiple firearms. And he had no previous criminal history, as far as we can tell, for any of the research that we're doing. And they showed up because he bought multiple firearms and they wanted to see that he still had them. He might be making straw purchases. That's what they're thinking. Now, do you, as a private citizen, just politely say, nope, come back with a warrant? And then do you think these guys could probably get a warrant based on, hey, Joe over here bought 6 guns in the last 45 days, and he bought 2 handguns at the same day, just 10 days ago. We want to go take a look. Do you think the judge would give them a warrant?
Well, let's take it out of this specific Delaware case, and let's create a couple different examples so I can show the audience down the lens how these cases oftentimes look in real life. So straw purchasing, of course, is a thing. That's when you are not purchasing an item as a gift, but you're purchasing it basically for another individual, so they don't have to circumvent the background check process, the 4473. So typically, if you're kind of an avid firearm enthusiast, an avid firearm collector, and you're out there, there may be times where you're purchasing 2 or more handguns at a time. That's all good and fine. You're not going to hear me say anything otherwise. What may rise to the level of triggering the ATF's attention is they'll look at some 3310 forms. Those are the handgun forms where the FFLs turn in if you've got multiple purchases, or just on a bound book inspection for an FFL, they'll see, boy, Dylan from Sheboygan keeps buying like Glock 17s all the time, over and over and over and over again. Okay, I can understand a Glock 17. I can understand 2 Glock 17s, maybe 3. But you get to a point, and again, just relying on my own real-world experience, you get to a point where somebody's purchased like 30 Glock 17s over the course of 6 months, and you kind of go, well, this seems a little off.
He might be reselling.
He might be reselling, right. And to be clear, I am not taking a constitutional position condoning or attacking or anything like that. My sole purpose in explaining this is to show how these investigations arise and the thought process behind them. So if you see somebody who's like, I don't know anybody who collects, I'm sure they're out there, they will show up in the comment section, but I know anybody who collects Gen 5 Glock 17s to the point where they're like, I need 50.
Hoping to get consecutive serial numbers.
Right. Thank you, Internet. Yes. Okay. So, but I mean, I think people get my point. That's what they're looking for. So the person who is purchasing 2 to 3 or whatever it is handguns at a time, but they're picking up this Luger, they're picking up that HKP30SK, they're picking up that CZP01 or whatever the case may be. That, to my knowledge, based on what I've seen, that's not like the ATF's going to look at that and whatever. But you see the guy, you do the bound book inspection, you're looking at the forms, you go back to this FFL and you're looking through and they see, Dylan Kyle has gone ahead and purchased 50 Glock 17s over the course of the last 60 days. And these aren't like Gen 1 or Gen 2 collectors. These are like modern. And there's going to be smoke about the fact that are you reselling?
And could then law enforcement agents, in your estimation, say, I have reasonable suspicion that something's happening here now, and carry this over to a judge and get a warrant to look at that? Or should the private citizen say, don't come in my house, I'm not showing you my guns without a warrant?
So those are two separate things. And I want to add one thing to the earlier discussion, because that's going to play a factor. So we've talked about straw purchases, right? But we've also talked about something else. I just want to make sure that the viewer sees that front and center. If you are selling firearms, purchasing and selling firearms for profit, you need a license to do that. Okay. If you don't have a license, that's one way to go to prison.
Yeah.
Okay. So as a collector, it's going to be natural to buy and sell and horse trade and so forth. But if you're explicitly going out there to purchase this firearm and flip it for cash, particularly if you're doing that across 50 Glock 17s in 2 months, eventually you're going to be on someone's radar. So now, with that question in mind, because now people are looking at this less presumably as a straw purchase issue, which it may still be, and more so as a reseller without a permit issue, without a license. Okay, so can they get a warrant? I imagine they probably could in that scenario where we've got, well, in my contrived scenario of 50 Glock G17s across the last 60 days, it's like, there's a pretty good reason. Now, you got to be really careful, right? Because, of course, the ATF can say, well, nobody needs 50 G17s. And it's like, well, you know, it's the Second Amendment. I don't need to show that I need it.
Yeah.
But there's also can be character patterns that begin to map closely to resellers without a license, which, for better or worse, and again, don't shoot the messenger here, that's illegal. So if they start to see fact patterns that map closely with this is criminal activity, then okay. If you've got 50 firearms, they're all completely different, you've got a range of different options, different makes, models, years, whatever, okay, they may not be able to do that, okay? But in my example, and heck, we can make it extreme. Let's say I bought 100 G17s in the last 30 days.
Yeah.
I think you're going to get a warrant search.
Yeah, that's going to raise eyebrows, and people are going to say, you know what, there is enough here for us to ask the follow-on questions.
Right.
Now, I am going to advise people that don't speak to a law enforcement officer without an attorney, without getting some counsel from your attorney. If someone shows up at your house and says, I have this list of guns that I think you have and you should still have, I would like to see them. Thank you very much. It's really, I'm a firm backer of law enforcement. Could you please follow the law and get a warrant before you search my house?
So let's talk about this a little bit more, and I unpack this in my own YouTube channel as well. But let's talk about it. The pros and cons of risking a warrant versus giving the consent. Okay. One thing in the back of your mind is always, what are they going to find on my search? Okay, so just invariably, we have to talk about it. So I'm not only talking about in my example of 100 G17s, are they all in the house, but what else are they going to find, right? If you're into something that maybe you don't want law enforcement looking at, whether it's something unlawful or something just lawful and you would prefer not to show up in the town newspaper when they open records request the inventory search of your home, that's all part of it. Okay. Likewise, I have seen warrants executed in people's homes where there's property damage done, doors smashed in, dressers damaged, things like that. I'm not condoning that, to be clear, but it's been known to happen a time or two. Let's put it that way. So that's maybe part of the equation. And yes, I understand you know, go ahead, file the lawsuit, all that kind of stuff. I will just say this: who do you think makes the rules and how you sue the government?
Right.
The government. Do you think they make that easy? No. If you get hurt by a drunk driver who's got great insurance, every personal injury attorney in the world is going to be lining up to take your case. You want to sue the government because they did $3,000 of damage to your home while executing a warrant? Good luck finding a personal injury attorney who's interested in taking that case, because at least in my experience, they're not out there. It's too high of a transaction cost. It's too difficult to get involved. And I'm not saying that's fair. I'm not saying that's just.
It's just right.
I'm just saying that's
Yeah.
the way it is.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got a myriad of issues stacked up of, look, if I'm going to make them get a warrant, and of course, how can John Q. Citizen, how can Dylan in our example really be aware of, like, well, where's the line of, like, my activity that they are aware of, and is it going to be enough to rise the level of probable cause? Yeah. That's a known unknown of the fact that John Q. Public isn't going to have those data points of saying this is enough, this isn't enough. That's the known unknown. We have the unknown unknowns, right? To use the Rumsfeldism of, all right, they've probably gone to the FFL, maybe a couple in town. They've probably looked at the bound books. What have those FFLs told him? Yeah, he's an avid collector, but he's buying things like I'm selling it to him at the, there's no way he's flipping these for profit, like with the prices I'm selling them to. Or, like, yeah, no, what do you mean? He's an avid competitor to IPSC IDPA. This is his favorite gun to shoot production class. It's whatever, right? We don't know, and those are obviously be things that presumably weigh heavily in your favor. I don't know about 100 Glocks, but something like that, right? So the unknown unknowns are what are everybody else telling them? What other pieces of information gleaned from online, witness interviews, and so forth has the ATF learned about your case, which may kind of sway them this way or that way? The bottom line is this. What you said is absolutely correct. Don't talk to them without the presence of an attorney. However, raising your right to an attorney and not giving the consent to the search, while invariably the correct information to give, while invariably the correct advice that any attorney can give, may come at a transaction cost of that warrant is coming.
Right.
I don't know what they're going to find. I don't know if it's going to include your cell phone, all your connected apps, messaging,
what's going to
email.
scope of the warrant that they
Right.
get. Yeah.
We don't know the damage, the inconvenience, the professional and personal reputation damage that may come with it. And I'm not saying any of that's fair. But I am saying that that's part of the decision matrix that you're in right now that you may want to be considering one way or the other.
It may just be easier to show them the two guns and have them go on their way.
It may be. It is, there's an old Supreme Court justice from almost 100 years ago who said that any attorney, no matter how green, should be able to give one piece of advice to their client. Never talk to the police. Okay. That is always the right generic advice to give as an attorney. Situationally, I'm not convinced it is necessarily always the correct advice to follow. Yeah. The problem is that the folks in those circumstances, you're generally not a highly experienced criminal defense attorney who's going to know, is this the exception to the rule or not?
Right.
So as a general rule, the safest thing I can tell anyone is, don't do any consent searches. Keep in mind that even if the warrant does turn out to be unlawful, that if you resist or impede or obstruct the warrant, even if the warrant gets thrown out, that might be a crime to have resisted the illegal warrant. Okay? I'm the messenger here, all right? So just if they do come back with a warrant, make sure that you're reserving your rights. I'm not consenting to any searches. And beyond that, it is what it is. You're going to have to contact lawyers and sort it out in the back end.
Well, you understand that just by saying all of this stuff, Tom, we're going to get torched on the internet just for being reasonable.
Yeah, just because I'm giving the best way of trying to salvage what you can from a bad situation that may not be fair, it may not be constitutional, it may not be legal, fact specific here. Yeah. What some people want to hear is lock the door and tell them to, to go to hell or something like that. Yeah. I get that. I don't know any attorney who is an attorney for long who gives that kind of legal advice. At the end of the day, our job as an attorney is to put our client in the best possible position for the best possible outcome. And sometimes clients are willing to be a martyr to a particular cause, whatever that cause may be, legalization of drugs, whatever the case may be. But usually not. Usually they say, I want the best possible outcome under the circumstances as they present themselves. And that's our job, is to follow client objectives and goals.
Outstanding. Well, thanks again for your insight. Always great talking about these topics, Tom.
Thanks, Kevin.
By the police and you're carrying concealed, do you need to do anything special in this scenario? Like tell the officer you have a gun. Click this video right next to me and I'll break down that scenario step by step on what you should do.